After Tunde's painful downfall and banishment, the village slowly began to change. People started treating women with more respect, and the whispers of injustice began to fade. But while the village celebrated a new dawn, Adaku silently carried the weight of yesterday. Outwardly, she had become a symbol of strength, a healer whose hands could calm fever, whose herbs could ease pain, and whose voice brought hope to broken women. Every day, people came to her hut, seeking remedies, guidance, and comfort. Children would run to her with smiles, and mothers would bless her with gratitude. But behind her calm eyes lived a storm. Each scar on her skin was more than a memory. It was a wound that had never truly healed. At night, when the village slept, she would sit alone by the fire, holding the necklace Baba Obi gave her. Sometimes her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the burden of all she had endured. The beatings, the screams, the cold floor she once slept on, all of it echoed in her heart. Even though Tunde was gone, his shadow still lingered in her mind. His voice haunted her dreams, sometimes whispering words of cruelty, other times mocking her silence. She tried to smile through it all. She dressed in bright wrappers and tied her hair with colorful beads. She walked tall, not because the pain was gone, but because she wanted other women to see what survival looked like. Yet, there were nights she cried silently, nights when her soul felt heavy, when she wondered if true peace would ever come. She had won the battle, but her heart was still fighting a silent war. Healing others came easily, but healing herself felt impossible. Sometimes she would walk deep into the forest, sit beneath the old Iroko tree where Baba Obi once meditated, and close her eyes, hoping to hear a voice that would tell her how to let go. But even the wind remained silent, and though she was praised as the village's light, no one truly saw the darkness she still carried within. Adaku had started a new chapter, but her story was far from over. Her heart still bled, not visibly, but in ways only she could feel. And in the distance, fate was already writing the next painful twist in her journey. It started with the arrival of a stranger, a tall, silent man with skin dark like midnight and eyes that held secrets. He came into the village when the sun was sinking behind the hills, carrying nothing but an old dusty drum wrapped in animal skin. No one knew his name. He spoke very little, only saying he was a traveler searching for a place to rest. The elders, curious but cautious, allowed him to stay near the edge of the village. No one thought much of him until the drum began to sound. That very night, a strange beat echoed through the wind. It wasn't loud or harsh. It was soft, slow, like a whisper from the earth itself. But with every beat, something began to shift in the village. Dogs started barking at empty air. The sky turned darker than usual, even when there were no clouds. Chickens refused to lay eggs, and the goats began trembling as if they sensed something no one else could see. Adaku, who had always found peace in the quiet rhythm of the village, suddenly found herself surrounded by unrest. At night, she heard whispers circling her hut, voices that didn't belong to the living. Shadows began to move where no light should cast them. Her herbs dried without reason. The fire in her cooking pot would die out, even though the wind wasn't strong. She tried to ignore it at first, telling herself it was just coincidence. But deep in her heart, she felt something had changed. Something dark had entered their lives. Crops began to wither in the fields. Farmers worked harder, but the soil felt cursed, like it was rejecting life. Children who once played freely started falling sick. Mothers came to Adaku, pleading for healing, but even her strongest potions worked slowly now. And all the while, the traveler stayed silent, never leaving his hut, except in the dead of night, when that drumbeat would return, quiet and eerie. The villagers started whispering again, not about Adaku this time, but about the drum. Some claimed it was cursed, others believed it belonged to the spirits, and the stranger had brought it from a forbidden land. A few even said they saw shadows dancing in the night around Adaku's hut, as if something was trying to reach her. It was as if the pain she had buried deep inside had called out to a darker force. And now it had answered. Adaku herself began to feel it. Her dreams were no longer peaceful. She saw flames, crying faces, and a dark figure standing in the forest holding that drum. She knew this wasn't just a coincidence. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Whatever curse the drum carried, it wasn't just haunting the village. It was coming for her. And deep inside, Adaku began to fear that her battle with pain and darkness wasn't over. A new storm was rising, and this time, it wasn't just about healing others. It was about surviving something far more terrifying. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against your skin like a warning. The moon hung low over the village, casting pale light over the trees. Baba Obi, the old hermit who once saved Adaku from death, sat near his fire, eyes closed, listening to the whispers in the wind. Suddenly, a scream shattered the night, a chilling, blood-curdling cry that echoed from deep within the forest. It wasn't a scream of any human voice he recognized. It was something else, something older, darker, something not meant for human ears. Baba Obi opened his eyes slowly. He didn't need to ask where it came from. The spirits were restless again. The last time he had heard such a cry was years ago, when he had first found Adaku lying broken at the edge of death. But this time, the cry was different. It wasn't a cry of pain, but one of rage, a warning. Something had awakened in the forest, something not seen in a long time. He stood up slowly, clutching his staff, his heart heavy with fear and wisdom. The next morning, he went straight to Adaku. Her hut, once a place of peace and healing, now stood cold and quiet. When she saw Baba Obi's face, she knew something was wrong. His eyes, usually calm and gentle, were filled with a strange fire. "You heard it too, didn't you?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. Baba Obi nodded. "Yes, and I have not heard such a cry since the days of the old war between man and spirit. But this is not the same evil that once haunted you, Adaku. No, this evil wears a new face, but it carries the same darkness." Adaku's heart skipped. She wanted to believe that everything had ended when Tunda was banished, when karma had dealt its final blow. But deep inside, she always felt that the story wasn't truly over. And now, with this scream from the forest, her fears were awakening again. Baba Obi continued, "The spirits are not at rest. The curse that entered this land through that drum has stirred something deeper, something ancient, something that cannot be fought with herbs or healing chants. This is not just about shadows anymore. It's about the balance between the living and the dead." Adaku's hands trembled as she looked toward the forest. She remembered the drum, she remembered the traveler, and now she realized that what they had thought was a curse might be something far worse. A calling. Something had been disturbed, and it was reaching out for her again. She felt a chill pass through her bones. The same wind that had carried whispers before now carried cries. The same shadows that once danced now crawled closer to her soul. Baba Obi placed his hand on her shoulder and looked into her eyes. "You must prepare, Adaku," he said in a grave tone. "This fight will be unlike anything you have known. The evil that left with Tunda's suffering has returned, but not in the form you remember." Adaku closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She had thought she had escaped her pain, but now she realized the past had only gone quiet for a while. And this time, whatever darkness was coming was not just coming for her. It was coming for everything she had built. The air in the village grew heavy, as if something unseen had wrapped its cold hands around every hut and every soul. People walked around with fear in their eyes and confusion in their hearts. The whispers that once danced around Adaku's hut had now spread to the entire village. But it was the dreams that truly began to terrify everyone. One by one, villagers started waking up in the middle of the night, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. And in each of their dreams, they had seen the same face, the face of Tunde, his wicked smile, his piercing eyes, the same twisted laughter that used to send chills down Adaku's spine. But he was supposed to be gone forever, banished, lost in the forest, gone from their lives. So how could he be haunting their dreams? Some villagers thought it was just fear playing tricks on them. Others believed the spirits were warning them. But then, something happened that made everyone stop doubting. A stranger walked into the village. He was tall, with a commanding presence. His clothes were fine, his voice deep, and his face unfamiliar. But his eyes, those eyes, everyone who looked into them felt a cold shiver. They weren't just cruel, they were familiar. Too familiar. Children cried when he passed. Old women trembled in his presence, and animals stayed far away from his shadow. Adaku noticed him first from a distance. Her heart pounded as she stared at him. He was not Tunde, not in appearance, but the way he moved, the way he stared at people. She knew that darkness. She had lived with it, survived it. The villagers started whispering among themselves. Is he a visitor? Where did he come from? Why does he look like a different man, but carry Tunde's spirit? Some elders said he might be a reincarnation, Tunde's soul reborn, sent back for revenge. Others believed it was the cursed drum that had opened a door for evil to return in a new form. Strange things began to happen again. Fires started by themselves. Goats refused to eat. Babies cried non-stop through the night. The plants that had just begun to grow after the last curse started to wither again. And always, the stranger was seen near the places where the misfortunes happened. One night, a young boy woke up screaming. He said the stranger came into his dream and whispered the exact words Tunde used to say when he used to beat Adaku. That was when fear turned into panic. The villagers now truly believed this man wasn't just a visitor. He was a curse wearing a new face, a spirit in human form, a demon reborn from the pain of the past. Adaku tried to remain calm, but even she couldn't ignore the signs. Something evil had returned, and it wore the scent of Tunde's hatred. The same cruelty she had once escaped was now standing in her village, smiling in a new body, and deep inside, she feared that the battle wasn't just spiritual anymore, it was personal. The shadows hadn't just returned, they had found a new home. Whatever this man was, human, spirit, or something in between, one thing was clear. Tunde's curse wasn't finished. It had only just begun again, more powerful and more terrifying than before. Adaku began to notice strange things happening around her. The herbs she used every day to heal the sick, the same leaves she once held with love and care, now burned her fingers the moment she touched them. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, maybe some mistake in the way she handled the plants. But it kept happening. Every herb, every root, every potion she once mastered, now reacted differently in her hands. It was like nature itself was changing around her. Then came the dreams, no longer gentle whispers or haunting echoes. They became sharp, clear visions, like moving pictures in her sleep. In these visions, she saw fire in the skies, shadows rising from the ground, and herself standing in the middle, holding light in her hands. She saw women crying, begging for help, and she saw herself lifting them up. But what frightened her most was the power she felt in those dreams, raw, fierce, and beyond anything she had ever known. One morning, Baba Obi came to her hut. He sat quietly for a long time, watching her hands, watching the herbs that now refused to obey her. Then he spoke softly. Adaku, this is not punishment. This is awakening. You are no longer just a healer. You are the chosen protector. His words made her heart tremble. Chosen protector. Adaku couldn't understand it. She never asked for power. She only wanted peace, a quiet life where no one would suffer the way she did. But now, it seemed fate had other plans. Baba Obi explained that the spirit world had chosen her, not just to heal wounds, but to fight darkness. The shadows that had returned with the cursed drum and the stranger were not ordinary. They were ancient forces of pain and fear, and only a spirit-strong heart like hers could stand against them. But Adaku was afraid. Every time she tried to use her gifts, she felt the pain of her past rise again. The screams, the beatings, the long nights of suffering, all came rushing back. Her power was tied to her pain, and that terrified her. She didn't want to fight. She didn't want to become a weapon. But the more she resisted, the stronger the visions became. And with each passing day, her presence caused the herbs to grow wilder, the winds to speak louder, and the flames to dance around her shadow. The villagers noticed the change too. Some began to fear her. Others whispered in awe. Children stared at her with wide eyes. Some women came secretly at night, kneeling at her door, begging for her protection. They believed she was a gift from the ancestors, a woman reborn with the fire of justice in her veins. Still, Adaku felt torn. Her hands now carried power, but her heart still carried pain. How could she protect others when she could barely protect herself from the memories that haunted her? She stood at the edge of something great, something divine, but the weight of her past kept pulling her back. Baba Obi placed a hand on her shoulder one evening and said gently, "Power without pain is just noise, but your pain has shaped your strength. You were never meant to stay broken, Adaku. You were meant to rise." And in that moment, Adaku understood. Her healing had just begun, not for others, but for herself. It started with whispers. One mother weeping quietly in the market, another pacing restlessly at the edge of the village. At first, no one paid much attention. Maybe a girl had wandered off to a neighboring hamlet. Maybe she would return. But then, it happened again and again. One by one, young girls from the village began to disappear, leaving behind nothing but silence and sorrow. Their mothers screamed their names through the night, running into the forests, begging the spirits for answers. But there was nothing, no trace, no sign, just empty homes and broken hearts. The entire village fell into fear. The elders called it a curse. Some blamed the spirits, while others said it was punishment for past sins. Children were no longer allowed to play alone. Doors were locked earlier, and fires were kept burning deep into the night to keep away whatever evil was lurking. The once lively village became a place of dread and quiet sobs. Adaku felt the unease growing inside her. The air felt heavier, the shadows darker, and in her visions she began to see faces, faces of the missing girls, crying out from places she could not reach. Something was terribly wrong, and she could feel it deep in her bones. Her heart screamed for justice, but her words were met with silence. She started watching the new stranger more closely, the man with the mysterious drum, whose eyes never smiled, whose footsteps left an invisible trail of coldness. He kept to himself, never spoke much, yet always seemed to be watching everything. Adaku felt the darkness around him like smoke. She told the elders about her suspicions, but they laughed it off. Some even accused her of jealousy or madness. "He is just a traveler," they said. "Stop chasing shadows." But Adaku knew in her heart something was off. Her instincts were screaming, her visions growing clearer and more terrifying. Still, no one believed her, until the unthinkable happened. Her own little sister, Naria, vanished. It was a warm evening. Naria had been sitting just outside the hut, weaving small grass bracelets and humming softly. Adaku stepped inside for a moment, and when she returned, Naria was gone. The bracelet lay unfinished on the ground. There was no scream, no struggle, just a chilling emptiness in the air. Adaku's legs gave way beneath her. Her screams pierced the sky, echoing through the trees. It was a pain deeper than anything she had ever felt. The same pain she once knew in Tunde's house now returned, sharper and more cruel. But this time it wasn't just about her. It was her baby sister, the light of her soul. Now, the village could no longer ignore the truth. If even Adaku's sister could vanish without a trace, no one was safe. The fear turned into panic. Mothers clutched their daughters tighter. The villagers began questioning everything, and slowly, all eyes turned toward the stranger with the cursed drum. Adaku stood before the elders once again, her voice shaking but fierce. "I warned you," she said, "and now it's my blood that has been taken." This was no longer just a series of strange vanishings. It was a nightmare creeping into their homes, one girl at a time. And Adaku knew she would not rest until she uncovered the truth and brought every missing daughter back, or burned the shadows to the ground trying. Adaku could no longer sleep at night. The pain of losing her little sister was tearing her apart, but her spirit refused to give in. Her dreams were no longer just dreams. They were guiding her, calling her, showing her glimpses of something hidden deep in the heart of the forest. One evening, she wrapped herself in a brown cloak, gripped her staff tightly, and followed the path her visions had shown her. The wind whispered warnings, but her feet did not stop. She walked through thick bushes, past the river, and into the part of the forest no one dared enter, the cursed zone, where even birds refused to sing. As she walked deeper, she heard strange sounds, low chants, animal-like growls, and the thumping beat of a drum, that same cursed drum that entered the village with the mysterious stranger. Her heart pounded, but she kept moving, hiding behind trees and crawling through tall grass. And then she saw it. There, in a dark clearing, stood a strange shrine made of bones, feathers, and red cloth soaked in what looked like blood. Fire torches lit the area, casting eerie shadows on the trees, and in the center stood the stranger, his eyes glowing with something unholy. He wasn't just a traveler, he was something else entirely. His face was calm, but his soul reeked of darkness. In his hands, he held the cursed drum, beating it slowly as he spoke words in a language Adaku had never heard. Behind him were more people, villagers, some with masks, others with painted faces, all swaying and chanting like puppets under a spell. Her heart broke when she saw some of the missing girls tied around the shrine, eyes wide in terror, lips sealed with fear. This wasn't just evil. It wasn't just one man. It was a growing cult, a secret darkness that had been feeding on the village's innocence, one soul at a time. Adaku's hands shook, but she knew she had to act. She stepped forward slightly, just enough to see clearly, but hidden from their eyes. She could see how the man's body moved differently now, almost like he was possessed, taken over by something ancient and wicked. The way he beat the drum wasn't music. It was a spell, a call to the dark forces of the forest. Every beat was a curse, every chant a prison. The girls moaned softly, their energy drained. The masked cult followers bowed before the drum like slaves to a god. Adaku realized the truth. This stranger was not just a man. He was the vessel for something demonic. And this cult, this dark shrine, had been growing silently right under their noses. That's why the girls were disappearing. That's why the village had begun to rot. The evil wasn't just walking among them. It was dancing, chanting, and spreading like wildfire. Adaku knew she couldn't fight them alone. Not yet. But she had seen enough. She now had proof and a purpose. As quietly as she had come, she slipped back into the shadows, her soul burning with rage and purpose. She would return to the village and warn the others. And if they still refused to listen, she would fight this darkness herself, even if it cost her life. Because this wasn't just about saving her sister anymore. This was about saving every daughter, every child, every soul in the village. The devil was no longer hiding, and Adaku had seen its face. Now it was war. The skies darkened even before the storm arrived. The air in the village grew heavy with fear, as though nature itself sensed that something terrible was about to unfold. Baba Obi, the wise elder who had guided Adaku through her darkest moments, had fallen gravely ill. His strength faded each day, and even the most powerful herbs could not heal him. Adaku stayed by his side, her heart aching as she watched the man who had once stood like a mountain now lie weak and frail like a withering leaf. One night, as thunder rolled across the sky, Baba Obi called Adaku close. His voice was barely a whisper, yet every word felt like a thunderclap in her soul. He reached beneath his pillow and pulled out a small, old necklace. It was unlike anything Adaku had seen, made of bone, wood, and a glowing crystal at the center. As he placed it gently around her neck, he looked into her eyes, his own filled with tears. "This is not just a necklace," he said. "It holds the spirit of our ancestors. When the time comes, it will show you the way. Only you can end this storm." Adaku wanted to cry, but she stayed strong. She nodded, clutching the necklace tightly as Baba Obi closed his eyes for the last time. The village mourned, but Adaku didn't have the luxury of grief. The final battle was coming, and she had to be ready. The next evening, the skies turned blood red. The cursed drum echoed again from the forest, louder than ever. The stranger, now fully consumed by the dark spirit of Tunde, led his cult into the village. Fires burned, mothers screamed, and chaos took over. The villagers tried to fight, but fear had already eaten their courage. But then, from the smoke and shadows, Adaku stepped forward. She wore the sacred necklace, and around her waist were the healing herbs blessed by Baba Obi before his death. In her hands, she held her staff, now glowing with a strange energy. She walked through the flames, unshaken. The cult followers tried to stop her, but the moment they touched her, they screamed in pain. The light around her body burned like fire against darkness. The final battle had begun. The stranger, with eyes no longer human, stepped forward. He laughed, the same cruel laugh Tunde once had. "You think you can stop me, little girl?" he hissed. But Adaku stood firm. "I am no longer a girl. I am the storm you feared." Their fight was fierce. Every time he struck, she countered with healing energy. Every time he summoned darkness, the necklace shone brighter. The cursed drum beat wildly, but it couldn't match the rhythm of Adaku's heart. The spirit of Baba Obi guided her hands, and the love of her lost sister gave her strength. The battle raged through the night, but when dawn broke, it was Adaku who still stood tall. The shrine collapsed into dust. The cult was scattered. The cursed drum cracked in two and melted into the ground, and the dark spirit that once wore Tunde's face screamed as it was finally banished. Adaku had won, but it wasn't just a battle of strength. It was a battle of spirit, of purpose, of healing over hatred. Baba Obi's last prophecy had come true, and the storm was finally over. The air was calm again, but only on the surface. Deep within, Adaku knew the evil wasn't fully gone. The cursed shrine may have fallen, the cult scattered, and the dark spirit pushed back, but something still lingered in the shadows, waiting to rise again. The children who had been rescued remained weak and silent, their eyes haunted by things too dark for their young hearts. And worse, the strange energy from the cursed drum hadn't completely vanished. A deep, pulsing force still echoed beneath the earth, threatening to awaken once more. Adaku sat by the village stream, staring at the sacred necklace Baba Obi had given her. It still glowed, but the light was fading, as if it knew the battle wasn't truly over. She touched the faces of the rescued children, hoping to bring comfort, but their souls were scarred. Healing herbs were not enough this time. Their hearts carried the weight of darkness, something no medicine could cure. Then, in her dreams, Baba Obi came again. His voice, soft like wind through the trees, whispered, "The final evil lies deep in the land, and only your light can seal it forever. But light comes with sacrifice." Adaku woke with tears in her eyes. She knew what it meant. The only way to end this evil was to give up the very power that had made her strong, the sacred gift, the energy that made her a healer, the protector of the weak, had to be returned to the spirit world. Once given back, she would no longer have the strength to fight, no longer feel the healing touch in her hands. She would become ordinary again, but in doing so, the evil would be sealed forever, and the children would be saved. Her heart was torn. This power was not just magic, it was her second life. It was the one thing that made her feel whole after all the pain she had survived. And deep within, a small voice whispered, "But what about your happiness? What about love, a family, peace? Don't you deserve that too?" She thought about the young man who had always watched her from afar, the one whose kindness had quietly warmed her heart. She had never let herself feel anything for him, afraid her life was too broken. But now there would never be a chance. Yet she made her choice. At sunrise, Adaku stood at the edge of the forest with all the children behind her. She held the sacred necklace one last time, kissed it gently, and walked to the center of the old shrine ruins. As the wind picked up and the ground trembled, she lifted her arms to the sky. A blinding light exploded from her chest. Her power, her gift, her strength, rising high into the air, circling the sky like golden fire. The earth roared, and then, silence. The cursed energy melted into the soil. The shadows vanished. The children stood up, smiling for the first time in weeks. Their eyes lit up, their spirits freed. But Adaku collapsed to her knees, weak and trembling. Her power was gone. She had saved them all. But in doing so, she gave away her last chance at joy. Villagers ran to her side, holding her in their arms, tears pouring down their faces. That day, the village didn't just see her as a healer. They saw her as a legend, a mother of the land who gave everything so others could live. Her heart bled once again, but it was the bleeding of love, of sacrifice, of a woman whose soul became the light in a dark world. After the final battle was over, and the cursed shadows had been buried deep beneath the earth, the village began to breathe again. Life slowly returned to normal. Children laughed, mothers danced around the fire again, and the fields blossomed with peace. But Adaku was nowhere to be found. She disappeared quietly, like a whisper on the wind. No one saw her leave. No one heard her footsteps. She simply vanished, leaving only her necklace by the stream, glowing faintly in the morning sun. Some say she walked into the forest and became one with the spirits. Others say the earth took her gently, keeping her soul close to protect the land she saved. But her name remained. It echoed across every village, passed from mouth to mouth, from grandmother to child, from drumbeat to firetail. The name Adaku was no longer just a woman's name. It became a symbol of strength, of sacrifice, of silent power that doesn't shout but shakes mountains. Children would grow up hearing her story, the healer who stood against darkness, the woman who fought evil with nothing but courage and heart. Some say when a child cries at night, Adaku's spirit wraps them in warmth. Some say when a woman weeps in silence, Adaku's spirit sits beside her, holding her tears like sacred pearls. In every corner of the land, her presence was felt, in the rustling of trees, in the scent of healing herbs, in the strength of women who refused to be broken. Villagers built a small shrine at the edge of the forest, not to worship her, but to remember her. Women would come, lighting candles and whispering their pain into the wind, and somehow their hearts always felt lighter, as if she had heard them, as if she was still there, watching, guarding, healing. There were those who believed Adaku became a spirit of protection, neither dead nor alive, but something in between, a force that lives in every woman who has ever suffered in silence, in every girl who dares to rise again after falling. Her story became more than just a tale. It became a movement, a light passed on from one generation to the next, and even the men who once ignored the cries of their wives sisters, and daughters began to change. They too heard the echo of Adaku's name in their dreams. They too feared the wrath of a spirit who fought not with weapons, but with justice. The village that once turned its back on a hurting woman now stood up to defend every voice. Because Adaku had taught them, true strength lives in the heart, and justice will always rise, no matter how dark the night. Her name was no longer just remembered, it became a promise that no woman would ever walk alone again, that no pain would be ignored, that no evil would go unchallenged. And so, across the lands, her story lives on, in every drumbeat, in every lullaby, in every tear that turns into fire. Because Adaku was never just a woman, she became a legend, and the lesson she left behind will never fade. A woman's pain can become her greatest weapon, and no evil can ever win when the heart rises for justice. What you've just witnessed is more than a story. It's a reflection of real pain, real strength, and real resilience. Adaku's journey is a mirror of what many silently endure. Her courage, her scars, her sacrifice, they all speak to something deeper within us. This tale deserves to be heard far and wide. Someone out there may find comfort, healing, or strength through her story. Don't let it end here. Let her voice echo in.
ये हमारा ऑफिस है, मेरी वीडियो बन रही है क्योंकि मैंने स्टोरी वाली वीडियो पे लगाना है। अपने मोबाइल से वीडियो बना रहा हूँ क्योंकि मैंने वीडियो के एंड पे अपनी वीडियो लगानी है। और मैं ये सब कह रहा हूँ उनसे, शाहजहान इधर आ जाओ, आपको वीडियो में आ जाओ, आप भी इधर आ जाओ। इनसे कहो कि मेरे भाई को आप वायरल करें, उनकी वीडियो को वायरल करें। मैं हूँ ना आपका भाई।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम गाइस। अस्सलाम वालेकुम गाइस। आप मेरे भाई को वायरल कर देना और उसके सारे पैसे मुझे देना क्योंकि वो कहता है कि मुझे पैसे चाहिए, है ना? बोलो।
अब आज जवाब तो हो गया, आप शाहजहान को बोलने दो। उनको समझ नहीं आती, ये अफ्रीकन लोग देखते हैं ना, वो तो अंग्रेज हैं। इंग्लिश में नहीं बोलते,
हम मुसलमान हैं।
हम मुसलमान हैं, वो अंग्रेज हैं, पागल। इंग्लिश में नहीं बोलना, बस आप आ जाओ, आपने जो बोलना। हाय फ्रेंड्स की बच्ची, ये देखो। हट जाओ खूबसूरत, आगे से हट जाओ। वे यार ही ना है। ये वीडियो शाहजहान की बन रही है। हाँ, आपको अंग्रेज लोग देखेंगे, आप बीच में ना आओ वीडियो में, ये अच्छी बात नहीं होती, ऐसा ना शाहजहान।
ये अंग्रेज हो गया, तुम जो समझेगी अंग्रेज क्यों पर
हट जा।
अगली बार गुड खेलूंगा तुम्हारी गुड।
ओए ना करो फिर देख।
हाय गाइस, मैं हूँ अंग्रेज अबीरा।
अंग्रेज ये हमारी वीडियो बन रही है। ये मेरा शाहजहान छोटा भाई बैठा है मेरे साथ,
और ये मैं छोटी मैं मियां। आई गाइस, मैं मियां हूँ।
ये
गाइस, मैं मियां, ये मेरा पागल भाई।